China has been accused of a cyber attack which caused the names and bank details of British Armed Forces members to be leaked. What are we talking about here then? What sort of scale are we talking about?
So, I mean, the scale is vast because it encompasses all sailors in the Navy, all pilots in the Air Force, all soldiers in the Army. So that's about 150,000, full-time troops across the armed forces. And basically, there was an external contractor which managed the payroll for the MOD. So managed the payroll for all these people. And a hack was discovered in recent days. China is being sort of identified as the main suspect, although the government isn't going so far as to formally identifying them at the moment. And basically, Beijing got access to the names and bank details of all these people, and the addresses of some of them.
And what would it want with those things? Because we're not at war with China. I mean, China has relations to countries that we are closer to war with, I suppose. What's the point of all of this in your view? What could they do with this information?
I think at the moment we're in the territory of kind of speculation about what we can do, but what we can look at is what they have done in the past. And we know, for example, that they contacted former pilots over LinkedIn to sort of get them to train members of the People's Liberation Army in China. So basically, sort of targeting those people with knowledge of sophisticated British military systems and basically tempting them with cash to share that information. And so you can see how, for example, if you had a list of lots of names and salaries, you could work out who are the most influential people and who you might want to target within the organisation as large as the British Armed Forces if you
Which,
wanted
which is
specific
dangerous,
information.
dangerous stuff, but it's not imperiling anyone. Is there? There's no suggestion that knowing the address of serving soldiers could put them at risk, is there?
You can see how it would be an invasion of privacy. It's a data issue, but at the moment, I think we're kind of speculating about how such information might have been used. But I think that template where if you imagine you're trying to penetrate a vast organization and you're trying to work out exactly who are those kind of movers and shakers that you need to get in contact with to get the best information possible, having such a database might be a good way of starting to go about that.
Are you surprised that this has happened, George? Because to one extent, we talk about this all the time, don't we? We talk about the threat of cyber attacks. We talk about the Ministry of Defence being an obvious target. The Ministry of Defence and its contractors should have the best protections in the world, you'd have thought, bearing in mind what they do for a living. Is this embarrassing for the MOD? Is it more worrying than that? What do you make of the tone of the response?
Well, having covered defence for a while, all things ultimately go back to procurement
Yeah.
more often than not. And you have to ask why the contract was A, outsourced, and B, outsourced to a company that clearly had fairly lax cyber security.
And just finally, do you think this will lead to? I mean, there are hawks in the Tory party. Presumably, a greater degree of hawkishness will be at least spoken about. I mean, our relationship with China is what it is, isn't it? That we feel threatened by them, but we are reliant upon them economically, and so we always have to walk a tightrope between those two positions. I suppose this adds more strength to the hawkish people, but it may not change the reality.
Well, Rishi Sunak has been pretty clear that he doesn't really want to have an antagonistic relationship with China. Bear in mind that James Cleverly, when he was Foreign Secretary, actually went to Beijing last year, and Foreign Office Minister Anne-Marie Trevelyan went only a couple of weeks ago. So we still have very much a relationship with them. The problem is that when Liz Truss was Prime Minister, she gave voice to a, very China skeptic wing of the party. She was the one who wanted to label them a threat and, go fully on sort of flag waving through the Straits of Taiwan sort of stuff. That is a vocal wing of the Conservative Party.
Yeah, it certainly is. George, good to speak to you. Thank you for joining us.
A massive data breach involving the MOD, targeting service personnel. Although it's understood investigations have not shown that any data has been taken. The government has not named the country involved, but Sky News understands that this is China. Well, Bill Hayton is an associate fellow in the Asia Pacific programme at Chatham House and author of The Invention of China. We can talk to him now. This hack at the Ministry of Defence. What's your understanding of what's going on here?
Well, based on what I've seen from the Sky News report, it seems it's not the MOD that have been hacked, but a commercial provider of services. So the MOD outsources its payroll to a private company. And from what I'm reading, it appears to be that private company that has been hacked. And if what I'm saying is true, then it means that the payroll, the names, maybe the addresses, the bank accounts of the members of the armed forces are now in the hands of the Chinese government. And this company handles other organizations in the UK as well. In some ways, it seems quite similar to something that was also blamed on China in the United States when apparently the Chinese hacked what was called the office, or what is called the Office of Personnel Management, where they managed to get basically the names of every government, servant in the United States and some of their personal details as well. So if this is the case, then obviously the Chinese now know the name of everybody who's and has been a veteran or is a veteran of the British Army.
I mean, that is potentially quite dangerous, isn't it? And of course, it comes after the Chinese did hack the Electoral Commission, and we've seen those targeted cyber attacks on some MPs as well.
Yeah, it seems that the Chinese Ministry of State Security has enough people working for it that they can just go around trying to hack every single organization they can possibly think of, and just extract data in the thought that maybe one day it'll be useful. And then maybe they can use sort of big data tools to, extract what they want. Maybe they don't need to know the names of every single person in the army, but if they could identify somebody who was in the army and has gone on to do something else subsequently, maybe that gives them some useful information.
This comes as President Xi has been meeting President Macron in Paris, hasn't he? I mean, quite a controversial visit. The first time he's been to Europe for about 5 years. And I mean, not all Europeans happy to see Emmanuel Macron meeting and wining and dining with President Xi.
No, no, it's an interesting set of countries that he's visiting. So he's visiting France, but then he's going to Hungary and Serbia. Hungary, famous, of course, of being the sort of the outlier in the EU, the one that's closest to Russia and the most sort of difficult for the other EU countries to deal with, and Serbia, which is also close to Russia and is outside the EU. But France, I think, is interesting because I think what the Chinese want to try to do is to split the Europeans away from the United States and basically say, you're just as much at risk from a President Trump presidency, next year, as the rest of the world, and perhaps you should, move away from your reliance on the US and sort of to a more multipolar world. I think would be the phrase that President Xi would use. So I think the choice of France is quite strategic here. But the other countries in the EU, I think, will be very concerned that China is trying to play divide and rule.